belong with me, and I belong with you. You belong with me, and I belong with you.
Hi, welcome everyone to bite number 9 of our Mental Health Matters video chat, which we like to call Belonging Bite Size. I'm Danielle Wood.
And I'm Sophie Wood. And today we're going to talk about managing and reducing workplace stress. So why don't you just dive straight in there, Danielle?
Of course. So, according to the World Wide Web, the most common sources of workplace stress include heavy workload, no surprise there, tight deadlines, and long working hours. I don't think I needed the internet to tell me that, having experienced all three of those. But other stressors can be things like job insecurity, depending on the industry you're working in. Redundancies might be something that comes around more frequently than others. I know that's been the case since we worked in the online gaming industry. And, you know, it has become more of a thing since and during COVID. So that's a real stressor for a lot of people. Another one is micromanagement and lack of control over job-related decisions. And that can cause people an enormous amount of frustration. Another aspect is poor relationships. Now, that's not only with colleagues, but it's also with supervisors and managers. And that can cause a hell of a lot of anxiety and a sense of isolation. So if you don't have the right working conditions, it can impact on both your physical and mental health. And remember the anxiety that people had about returning to the office once COVID had died down a bit. They felt like they were more at risk of catching COVID. And that had a major, major impact. If you worked in HR or people at the time, you'll know that that had a major impact on the mental health of a lot of people.
Absolutely, it did. So what we've explored there is that workplace stress can come from a variety of angles, a variety of sources. And it's important that we're able to recognize these sources. So now let's talk about some of the techniques that we can actually employ for managing stress. So one effective technique is practicing mindfulness. Now, this involves staying present in the moment and can be achieved through activities such as meditation or a simple deep breathing exercise. You can find guided meditation sessions on YouTube, and there's so many different types and lengths and style, so everybody should be able to find one that suits them. Now, I remember in one company we worked for, they used to run a session every Wednesday morning, and people just tuned in via a Teams call, and everyone had the choice whether to turn the camera on or leave the camera off. And we just went through a 10-minute guided session run by one of our work colleagues who had a passion for this type of thing. Now, I remember he used to dial into those quite a lot, didn't you, Danielle?
Yeah, I tried to do them every week if I could. It's a great technique for calming you and grounding you for the day ahead. And an added bonus was similar people tended to turn up every time. So you started to get a little network of people that you could reach out to if you wanted just to have a chat, one of those water cooler moments during COVID. So another thing I think, which is really, really helpful for people, it's that, hacking your time management. So if you prioritize a task by breaking them down to manageable chunks and setting yourself some realistic deadlines, it can really reduce the feeling that some people get of being overwhelmed by their workload. And if you find it difficult to do this and don't know where to start, then I will recommend that you take a look at the Eisenhower method. And I will pop a link to that in our comments in case you want to take a closer look. I wrote a coaching newsletter on this subject a while back, and it's got some interesting tips around it there. So I'll share that with you. It's also important that we take regular breaks to recharge throughout the day. Now, it's recognized that you go from fully focused to fully fatigued mentally after 90 minutes. That's not that long. So ideally, you don't really ever you don't ever really want to get to that point. Thanks, Sophie. And Report app suggests that you take a 17-minute break every 52 minutes. And that's very, very specific. However, I'd say that as long as you aim no more than an hour at a time, that should keep you feeling on top of your game. So get up every hour, move around, and drink a little bit of water.
Exactly. So, physical activity is a proven stress reducer. So, encouraging employees to take short walks, take regular exercise, or engage in any form of physical activity that they enjoy can really help alleviate stress, because it just releases all of these kind of mixtures of happy hormones that we have inside of us. So, additionally, fostering a supportive social network at work can provide emotional support and significantly reduce stress. And it's really, there's so much benefit to be gained from kind of making those human connections with each other. That's really important.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The human connections is what makes it all worthwhile. For me, that social support is another important ingredient, especially at work. So now let's discuss organisational strategies to reduce stress. So what can employers do? Well, to start with, they can implement policies that do promote a healthy working environment. That's things like flexible working hours and remote work options, and providing employees with the necessary resources and support to do their jobs effectively can avoid frustration, and that's also very key.
That's a really good point, Danielle. And I also think organisations should consider creating a culture where taking breaks is actively encouraged and not frowned upon. So, how many of us work at our desks throughout lunch? Now, I know I've done it loads over the years. And in fact, I think it's quite a cultural thing, especially in the UK. But when I moved over to Spain and I started working in Gibraltar, I noticed that many of our European colleagues make it a point to actually take their full lunch hour and socialise with each other whilst they eat. So workspaces had kitchen areas and tables where people gathered to sit, eat, and chat. And as you wander in to make yourself a cup of tea, just hearing the chatter and the laughter just gave you a really good feel-good feeling. And all of those really kind of great mix of good hormones within us were released. So that was a really lovely thing to see, a real kind of cultural difference, which I think we could learn from. I think the culture should also include promoting the use of things like annual leave days and mental health days if you offer them as an organisation. Now, regularly checking in with employees to understand their stress levels and their stress triggers and the nature of their workloads can help identify and mitigate stresses at a very early stage. And that's really important as well.
So another aspect for me is promoting work-life balance. And I think that's quite essential. I know these days people say, oh, there's no work-life balance, it's just life. But actually, drawing those boundaries between your working day and your personal time is really important. Now, if you can get those clear boundaries in place, that's wonderful. So if you're a manager, you can encourage employees to unplug after work hours and respect those boundaries as an organisation. That will be really helpful. But it only really works, though, if managers and leaders exhibit the behaviours that they want to see. So if you're a manager who emailed somebody at 9 o'clock at night and expects a response before the next day, then that doesn't really allow people to switch off, does it? There's an expectation that something will be done. Also, if you're a boss that always works late, just the way you work, but you roll your eyes at people when they leave on time, it does send out a contradictory and somewhat harmful message. And isn't it better to have healthy, fully functional, effective people during the key hours than a whole lot of people who are hanging on by a thread after working for ridiculous amounts of hours a day? Just saying.
And what else? So
Offering programs that support employees' personal lives, such as childcare support or wellness programs, can also contribute to better work-life balance.
Yeah, and work-life balance is absolutely fundamental for our overall well-being. So just to recap on this, we've identified that managing and reducing workplace stress involves recognizing the common sources of stress, using techniques like mindfulness and taking a proactive approach to things like time management, implementing organizational strategies such as flexible working policies, promoting this healthy work-life balance, which is made fully acceptable, and that's key, fully acceptable by managers who should be leading by example around this.
Yeah, absolutely. Cultural norms are very heavily influenced by managers. So channeling those supportive and inclusive behaviours is the absolute fundamental bedrock of all of this working. So that's it for this session. And in our next session, we'll discuss how to support employees who are in crisis situations.
Right. So on that note, I'd like to remind everybody that you can pop your comments or your questions in this post, or if you prefer, you can DM us. But if you want to find out more about us, visit our website, www.belongingbase.com. Thanks for coming, and until next time, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.
To answer for, 'cause you belong with me, and I belong with you.